I'm Scott Walker, and this is Walks on the Wild Side, and I am really pissed off. Welcome back to Walks on the Wild Side, the channel where I help you capture the beauty of nature through your camera lens. Now, I was out shooting a different video earlier today. Take a look. In this video, I'm going to share with you my top tips for taking macro and close-up photos of wildflowers. So today I've got my Tamron 28-75mm lens and my Sony 90mm macro lens. And if you watched my last video on woodland small details, I used the Tamron 28-75mm throughout, and I absolutely love this lens. It's got brilliant colour rendition. So all was going well. I was capturing some lovely photos of flowers, and as the day progressed, the wind just started to pick up a little bit, so I needed my tripod for some stabilisation. And unfortunately, on one shot, as I released my camera from the tripod, it slipped out of my hands. Now, it landed on the lens, which unfortunately snapped it. So here's my Tamron 28-75, and you can see there's no mount on the back of it. You can just see electronics. So that's going to have to go off to Tamron to see if it can be mended. Fingers crossed it can. And here's the mount that remained attached to the camera. Now, as I went to my A9 to have a look at the sensor and check everything was okay, I could see all sorts of bits of plastic inside it. And I was immensely worried that maybe I'd scratched the sensor. So I rushed home, cleaned it all up, tested and tested and tested it. And luckily the sensor's absolutely fine. As gutted as I was to lose a treasured lens, I would be absolutely devastated if I'd lost my A9 as well. Now, the ironic thing is, only a few hours before this, I'd watched a video from another guy who makes photography videos on YouTube, James Popsis. I'm sure you all know him really well. He's very popular. He's got a huge channel, makes great videos with lots of humour about landscape photography predominantly, other stuff too, but mainly landscape. And he had made a video as to why he never uses his lens hood anymore. And the only good reason he could come up with to have a lens hood on was to protect his camera. But it is lucky that I had my lens hood on, because if I hadn't, I'd have probably smashed the front element as well. So if it's only one reason to use your lens hood, it's the most important reason. Now, as a result of this, I couldn't carry on with the flower macro photography. But if you are interested in that, I'm going to come back and either remake that video or finish making it at another time. So click the subscribe button, and hopefully within the next few weeks or couple of months, fingers crossed, we'll have that video done. But for now, because I had to spend some time cleaning up my camera, it made me think that perhaps a useful video for people might be to understand how to keep your camera gear clean in the fields. Now, I'm going to give you some tips and some advice from things that I've picked up over the years to help protect my camera gear. And the first one really is don't drop your camera. But that being said, there are some serious points about how you look after your gear in the field. Now, firstly, never ever remove your lens whilst the camera is still on. Switch the camera off and wait to hear the click. Now, once you've heard that click, all the energy that's in the sensor has dissipated. And why is this important? Because if there's electricity still running through the sensor, the plates that make it up are charged. And if you take the lens off whilst the plates are charged, it will attract dust. And then when you put your new lens on, the photos will have all sorts of dust spots on them. So never take your lens off whilst the camera is on. Always switch it off and wait to hear that click. So we now know we need to protect our sensor at all costs. So what's the best way to go about changing your lens if you need to do so in the field? Well, it's certainly not to be holding your camera like this. You want to, if you really have to change it, to hold your camera downwards. And you want to know where the button is to release your lens. So I've already got my finger on it here, and I'll push it, release, and slide off that lens into my camera bag, all the time keeping my camera face down. Pick up my next lens quickly, slide it into position, and lock straight away. So you should be able to do that in a matter of seconds. Now it's worth practicing because you need to know how to line up that lens with the camera mount without looking at it. Because if you're looking at it, you're exposing your sensor to everything that's in the air. If you're keeping it downwards, unless it's a really windy day and you're getting things blowing up from the ground, you're at much less risk of any debris or anything hitting your sensor if it's down. So make that motion as quick as possible. Unlock, slide off, slide back on, and lock into position. And practice it till you can do it without even thinking about it. So what about if you do need to clean your gear in the field? Well, here's my little box of tricks. Now, I don't carry this with me in the field, but some of the things that are in it, I do. And the first thing that you want to make sure is that you've got a decent air blower. Now, you can get air blowers very cheaply, and you even sometimes get them free with photography magazines. But if you get a decent one, I use Hurricane Blower. Another good brand is Rocket Blower. But if you get a decent one, you'll get a good burst of air from it that should knock off anything that's stuck to your camera's glass or the sensor. So let's take a look. So here in my box of tricks, I've got a couple of Hurricane Blowers, and I keep them in a sandwich bag, even though they're already inside the box. And why is that? Well, I want to protect these from dust as much as possible, because the last thing that you want is to go and blow more dust inside your camera or onto the lens when you're trying to clean it. So first things first, let's get the blower, point it downwards and give it a good few pumps of air just to get anything out of it that's inside. Next, we're going to inspect our lens. Now, under light outside, it's much easier to see than in here, but I can see actually under my desk lamp that I do have some dust on it. So it's worth cleaning anyway. Now, you always want to hold your lens so the glass is facing down, and get your blower and point at an angle and give it some fast bursts of air and move around it. Try all the different spots to blow as much off it as possible. So why are we doing this? Well, it's to make sure that as any dust or sand or whatever's on there, as much of it as possible falls away. If you are blowing like this, the dust will come off the lens and just fall straight back down onto it. So always have your camera this way around and be blowing up at it from an angle. Why from an angle? Well, that's to make sure that the dust doesn't then go down inside your air blower and blow it back onto the lens. So we've given that a good blow now, and let's have a look. It's much cleaner. So I'm going to reattach my lens cap. Now, exactly the same principle works when you are cleaning the inner element of your camera lens. But what about when you're cleaning the sensor? So let's take off our lens. And the first thing you want to do is blow around that shutter. So we're going to make sure that everything comes out, holding the camera upside down and blowing at an angle. That looks clean. So what about if you can't get that stubborn dust off your sensor and you don't want your day to be ruined by having to go home or go to a camera shop and get your sensor cleaned? Well, what you need is one of these. It's a sensor brush. So let's open it up. You know, it might look to some people, I've heard people describe it as a sort of makeup brush. And I've got it inside the box, inside some plastic, inside a tube, and then inside some more plastic. Because, again, I want to keep this as spotless as possible. So we've got some very fine bristles here. And what you want to do is make these bristles attract the dust. So we need to add some static. So I'm going to go back to my air blower and I'm going to pump air really, really fast through those bristles. Lots and lots of times. Keep doing it over and over and over again. And when you think you've done it enough, you haven't. Keep doing it some more. Blow lots and lots of air into it and you'll introduce static just the same as you would if you were rubbing a balloon on your hair. So now we've perhaps done that enough. Let's go back to our sensor, open up the camera's cap, and I'm just going to very lightly brush over the sensor. Now the idea isn't that you want to push the dust to the side, because otherwise all that's happening is you're pushing it into all the little nooks and crannies, and suddenly when the electronics activate again, it's going to cause havoc because the dust is still in there. What you're actually trying to do is pick up the dust with the brush. So again, all looking good, can't see anything, lens cap's on, and hopefully this brush has now picked up all the dust that's in there with the static that we added to this brush. So the last thing I want to do is go and put my brush away when there might be dust on it. So we want to make sure that we're going to blow through the brush again. And this time, the point of doing it is to blow dust off the brush, not to add static to the brush. Another point that's really important here is to not touch the brush with your fingers. This bit's fine, but don't touch the bristles, because your fingers contain all sorts of oils which you'll transfer to the bristles, and then when you come to brush the sensor, you'll transfer those oils to the sensor. And you should never touch a sensor, and you should never transfer the oils from your skin to the sensor. So we'll give this a good dusting down, or airing down, with our air blower. And that should be enough. So now I'm going to neatly pop it back into its plastic without touching the bristles. Pop it back into its tube. Cap of the tube goes on. Inside the next plastic sleeve. And I'll put it away inside my box to keep it nice and clean for next time I need it. So what happens if you can't get that stubborn dust off your lens? Well, the next thing we need to look at is cleaning the lens with some lens fluid. Now, it's really, really important that you use proper lens fluid that you've bought from a reputable retailer. So camera shop like Jessop's, for example, or any of the independent camera retailers, they will sell decent stuff. There's one particular brand on Amazon that I trust. I don't buy anything other than these if I have to buy from Amazon, and that is Camkix, C-A-M-K-I-X. I've used their stuff before. It's always rated very highly by purchasers, and whenever I've tried it, it works just as well as the stuff I buy from the shops. But other brands, I wouldn't trust them, to be honest, because you just don't know what's going into them. If you do look at other brands, make sure you read the reviews. Make sure it's not just had 5 or 6 or 10 or 20 good reviews. Make sure it's got hundreds of good reviews, because this fluid is designed specifically to clean your lens. Now, from experience, I can tell you, you don't want to try anything else than lens cleaning fluid. There was one time that I drove from here up to Liverpool and I was going to photograph the red squirrels. And I had completely forgotten to pack any cleaning equipment in my bag. And I opened the camera bag up and my lens was filthy, searching everywhere. And I realised that I'd got some wet wipes in my bag. Because, you know, nature photographers, we always need to think about hygiene, right? So you carry wet wipes around. I thought, well, it can't do any harm, can it? You know, we use wet wipes to clean a baby's bum. You're not going to do any harm to your camera with it. But it did. I cleaned my lens and it left a film right over the front of the lens. I should have never have done it. This was years ago and I've learnt I've never touched my camera's lens with anything other than lens fluid since. So it's really, really important. Get good stuff and only use the right stuff. And there is a proper technique to do it. So first we want some lens cleaning cloths, or you could perhaps use lens cleaning tissues that already come loaded with some lens fluid on them. But I like using these lens cleaning cloths, and they're microfiber cloths. And likewise with these, you can pick them up from any decent camera retailer, or you could use Cam Kicks on Amazon. But make sure you get decent stuff, because some of these things say that there's no lint in them, but there is. And then all you're going to do is get little bits of lint all over your lens when you're trying to clean it. So the technique, we get our lens fluid and we just give it a little spray. Don't spray onto the lens, spray onto the cloth. And the reason we do that is because if you spray too much, just get another cloth out, leave that one to dry, and it'll be good for another time. But if you put too much fluid onto the lens, it could take ages to dry, it'll get in all the little nooks and crannies, it's just a nightmare. So just one little squirt onto the lens cloth, and we'll wipe in circular motions, moving towards the middle. So it's very tempting actually to put your lens cloth bang in the middle of the lens and work your way outwards, but all you're going to do then realistically is push the dust to the edges, and when you start moving around it'll free up. So we're working our way from the outside in, so that anything that's left will just be in the middle of the lens. And now I'll take a part of the lens cloth that hasn't had lens fluid on it and just flick off that dust. And it's all gone. So that has worked really well. And the same thing applies with the rear element of your lens. It works in just the same way as the front elements. So the final thing when it comes to cleaning, what if you've tried all this? You've got your lens clean, you've got your sensor clean, and you turn your camera on and there's something still there. Well, it's usually on your sensor, because sometimes you just can't see the dirt that's making those little grey patches on your pictures. So if you're in the field, my best advice is to try and work around it. If you know where that little spot of dust is, or whatever it is that really won't come off, try and position yourself so that either that gets buried within the body of your subject. So for example, if you are taking a photo of a bird, you might put it somewhere in its belly, and that little dust just won't show up against all the feathers that you're taking a photograph of. Or put it in a really clear part of the picture. So if you're photographing something against a really clear, blurred out background, put it in that, because when you get the photo home into Photoshop, you can just clone out that little bit of dust. What becomes difficult is when it's in other areas that maybe stand out more. Now, if you've got lots of these spots, it's going to be really, really difficult to position yourself to still be able to take photos that you can either hide the dust or clone it out later. What I would never ever attempt to do is clean my sensor beyond using a sensor brush in the field. But there is a next step that you can do when you get home. So we have here sensor cleaning kit. So this one's which one is this? This one is the APS-C one. No, this is the full frame one. So this is the one for my A9. Now, it's important that you get a sensor cleaning kit that's the right size. So in it, there are some swabs. They're buried in this little packet here. And you tear it open and the swab is just the same size as your sensor. So you can't use a full frame swab on an APS-C lens. You could potentially use an APS-C swab on a full frame lens, but you'd end up having to use two of them because you need to wipe down it and then there'll be a bit that you've not wiped, so you'll have to get another swab and wipe down another part of it. But it's quite a technical process to clean your sensor. So I'm going to save that for another time because this video is all about what you do in the field. And I really wouldn't recommend ever trying to clean your sensor in the field. And the reason for that is because you're going to have your sensor exposed to the elements for too long. You risk doing far more damage to your sensor by having the lens off it and it exposed to the elements for many minutes than you do just by giving up and going home. I'd rather drive a couple of 100-mile round trip, get home, clean my lens, go back another day and keep my fingers crossed that I get some good photos next time than I would to risk cleaning my sensor in the field. It just isn't worth it. So we will cover at another time how to clean your sensor because that's probably a full video in and of itself. Now I hope you found today's video useful. It wasn't the video that I'd hoped to make for you. And if you are interested in those flower macro shots, then please subscribe and come back at another time when I've made that. I've got some interesting videos planned coming up, so I'm sure you'll enjoy those. If you found today useful, please hit the like button. And if you've got any questions, queries or comments, please make a note of them below. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.